All right, good evening. Welcome to the Monday, July 11th, 2022 meeting of the Mashpee Board of Selectmen. Meeting of Mashpee Town Hall, 16 Great Neck Road North, Mashpee, Mass. Broadcast live on local cable channel 18. Stream live on the Mashpee website, mashpeemass.gov, channel / channel 18. We'll begin by Pledge of Allegiance. We'll wait 2 seconds.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We'll have a moment of silence for those who've lost their lives to gun violence in the last week since we met. Thank you. Discussion and approval of the Monday, June 27th, 2022 regular session minutes. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second? All right, all in favor?
Yes.
All right, so just a quick word on how tonight's going to go. We have a few matters of business that are scheduled. We're going to start promptly at 6:45 with our presentation from esteemed colleagues at DEP. That's going to run no later than 8. Promise them for travel purposes, we'll conclude that at 8 o'clock. We'll entertain as much discussion as we can have in that period of time. And then we'll move on to the remainder of our agenda, whatever's left. So we'll start off with a 6:35 public hearing. I'm going to do real quick before that. Sarah Colvin from the Cape Cod Commission has a real quick announcement to make that I don't want to force her to stay for the next 3 hours to make.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I spent a lot of my reporting career watching these meetings. So as Andrew said, I'm Sarah Colvin. I'm Communications Manager for the Cape Cod Commission. Thank you so much for giving me the time today. I wanted to let you all know that the Commission is hosting its 8th annual One Cape Summit on August 1st and 2nd at the Watershed Resort in Harwich, and we are looking forward to convening once again in person. We've not done so since 2019. Over the course of this summit, attendees will hear from those local to Cape Cod, as well as others from across the country, on efforts to improve housing affordability and accessibility, address marine and freshwater quality, mitigate and adapt to climate change, and promote sustained economic vitality, among other regionally significant topics. As we've done in the past, we're partnering with the Cape and Islands Municipal Leaders Association to host their August meeting at the One Cape Summit. The breakfast will take place at 7:30 in the morning on August 2nd at the Watershed Resort. It'll run for about an hour and a half, and the summit will begin at 9. And we invite all of the select board members, as well as the town manager and assistant town manager, to attend the breakfast, as well as the full summit if you are able. Our website is live, and I do have some invitations for the Cape and Islands Municipal Leaders Association that I will leave for you to whomever would like to take them. And I'm open to any questions if you have them.
Okay. Great. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you. Looking forward to seeing you all there.
All right, 6:35 public hearing. John, you mind reading the hearing notice?
Pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 138, Board of Selectmen acting as the local licensing authority for the town of Mashpee will conduct a public hearing on the application of Wildfire Pizza LLC, 2 Center Street, Unit 2A, Mashpee, Mass. 02649. Lisa Canada, manager, for a new 12 Section 12 annual all-alcohol beverage restaurant license. The premises is described as 1-floor ground unit with a basement for storage, 3,520 square feet total, 1 main dining room, an open kitchen, 2 bathrooms, 2 entrances, and 2 exits. Said hearing will be held Monday, July 11th, 2022, 6:35 p.m., the Waycourt Meeting Room at Mashpee Town Hall, 16 Great Neck Road North, Mashpee, Mass.
Great. Mr. Carter, you're representing the Canadas?
I am. Good evening. It's nice to see everybody again. I thought we were down to 3 selectmen as opposed to 5. So, I represent Wildfire Pizza LLC. They are looking for an all alcoholic license. Michael Canada is here. He is the owner, and Lisa Canada, who is the manager, is here. They plan on having 6 local employees that will be tip certified. Mr. Canada was a firefighter, so everybody will be a CPR trained and things of that nature. I think we've submitted everything. It's a local pizza house that's going to be right down the street, around the corner. There's no rumors that they might supply food for the selectmen, but at these meetings. But in any event, I'm here to answer any questions, or the Canadas are here to answer any.
Okay, great. Being public hearings, any member of the board have any questions? Any members of the public have any comments, questions on this application? All right, hearing none, I'll make motion to close the public hearing.
I do
Oh,
have one
go ahead,
question
David.
after all. I'm not sure what the hours of operation are. My only concern is that I believe their tribe has a school over in that same development, and was wondering, how that might be affected by the operation with a liquor license.
Michael, what?
Hours of operation are.
They gotta be at
Could
the
you come
mic.
up to the mic so people can hear, please? Thanks.
We are closed Sundays and Mondays. We open at 11:30 Tuesday, 4 o'clock on Tuesday, and then 11:30, and we close at 8, and then 11:30 till 8 on Wednesday through Saturday. So we close at 8 o'clock at night, and we're open from lunch from 11:30 till 8 p.m.
Okay, so I guess Thursday and Friday,
Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday would be lunch and dinner.
lunch and dinner. Yeah, I don't know what any laws are around having, something so close to a school. My only concern is, people leaving the establishment, if there's children out in the area, is my only concern.
All right, is there any issue, required distance?
I'm not aware of any issues. But
Maybe we can move ahead with contingent upon determination that there's no conflict between setbacks from state law, state or local law, and the distance to the school. If there is, we can come back.
Okay,
That amenable? So-
sounds fair.
I think that was reviewed by the planning board who approved it, but they had to go in front of the planning board.
You think it's already been approved? It's been
By the planning board,
by the
yeah.
planning
And
board?
I thought
So
that
they
issue
did
was
their
raised.
homework, so it's been done.
Right.
I got a nod of the head, and from the planning chair.
Mary?
Oh, I think this was on. So anyways, I'm Mary Wagan, Chair of the Planning Board. This matter, this use at at this address with an increase in seating to what, 32?
35.
35 seats was approved by the planning board. And the reason why I voted yes is that development, that commercial piece of that development is not complete. This was to be, it's permitted for 2 buildings, 2 commercial buildings, and only 1 commercial building is there. So we felt there was an adequate amount of capacity at the site for this restaurant. Did that answer your question, Tom?
I guess I was concerned about what David asked, that in this, what he thinks is a school zone, or there's an educational facility, of what I'm not.
There is, but that did not fall under the purview of the planning board. We know that the license would come up before you. I think there was some conversation about maybe limiting use, the hours of use of the liquor license, but I don't think the planning board ever codified that.
So it wasn't a concern. You were aware of it, it wasn't a concern.
It was not in that it's not the jurisdiction of the planning board.
Right.
So,
Well, that's why I thought you were nodding your head over there. That's
no,
what- So, okay.
I'm still reading your packet for
So
tonight.
I think it is our jurisdiction as the local licensing authority to make a determination on any conditions you want to place. So, why don't we,
yeah,
does
I'm
any
not-
other, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, the audience can't hear everybody. Can you bring your mics really close? Thank you.
Yeah, I'm not aware of inspectional services having any issues.
Okay.
And I would have thought if there was one, then they would have brought it to our attention.
I would agree. I'd
But-
like to entertain a motion to move forward and.
All right, well, we need a motion to Carol made a motion to close the public hearing. Is there a second? Is there any other comment in the audience? Hearing none, there's a motion to close. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor of closing the public hearing?
Yes.
Aye.
Yes.
All right, next, the substantive motion on the application.
A motion to go ahead with the application with the stipulation, if there is an issue, it will be addressed by the,
That we have,
The board?
they could come back.
To come
If
back.
there's found to be a
Right.
conflict
if
between
there is a conflict.
the liquor license laws and the proximity to the school.
Second.
Okay? All right, if none, then you're good to go.
And
All right.
and Lisa, if there's any issues, I'll bring it right to your attention.
Appreciate it, thank you.
Okay.
Or
Any other
Jerry's.
discussion? You okay with that, Tom?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to see a delay. I mean,
No, they're
No,
getting-
we're not making it
That's
delay.
fine. I'm good.
Okay, all in favor of the motion as made by Carol? Aye?
Yes.
Aye.
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 All right, unanimous.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank
Always
you.
a pleasure to see you.
Same.
All right, next up, Ms. Thayer. Discussion and approval of year-end transfers.
There's a new paper in your packet.
Yep.
Did they get the last minute?
If you take a long time, Jack has to stay late.
So these are the typical annual year-end transfers that we request. There are 3. I know initially we had submitted 2. There was one addition today. And I'm just asking for the approval of the Select Board. If you do approve these transfers, it will then go to the Finance Committee for final approval.
All right, so we have 3 requests, $2,100 to the treasurer's collector's postage account, $40,000 to police sergeant overtime, and $7,000 to Medicare expense. Anybody have any questions, Don or Rodney, on any of those 3?
Motion to approve.
Motion made, second, all in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Don.
Thank you.
Next up is a change order request, change order 2 for the Mashpee Middle High School track and field renovation. The DPW director is not here.
It's not here.
That's fine. It's a request for an ad of $8,420.92 to put in a conduit to allow cable so that they can do televised
Yeah, that's
under,
backside of
on
This
the
was
backside of the field.
recommended by the school and by the director, and I think it speaks for itself.
Seems common sense.
Okay,
Make a motion to approve.
I'll second that.
all right, all in favor?
Yes.
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 Jack, we have a request to the certification, the hiring process, firefighter EMT Tyler Kuzo. Is there any discussion on that? Rodney, you satisfied that all procedures
All the
complied with?
procedures were complied with.
Okay, is there a motion to certify that
So
hiring?
moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Yes.
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 Next, discussion and approval of dispatch agreement with Barnesville County Sheriff Department. Want to give us 30 seconds on that, Jack?
Sure. Last year's contract was 118. This year's is 130. Their contracts are based solely on the number of responses. We saw a large increase last year with our responses, and so that's why it's at 130. It's a 10.1% increase.
It's all call-driven.
Huh?
It's all call-driven.
If next year, if it's, we don't
If
have
it's
many calls,
down, then
then-
it would be reduced. It's all call-driven.
All right.
Is there a motion
Motion
to,
approved.
To approve?
Second.
all in favor?
Yes.
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 Thanks.
You know, for the amount of siren noise in the background all day long, I'm just like, wow.
Been busy.
They are busy, for certain.
Memo from the Assistant Health Agent to authorize Rodney to sign to participate in the Public Health Excellent Grant Program for shared services from the county. Christine, how are you?
Hello, Christine Willander, Assistant Health Agent. So this is a non-binding document. I think it's a little misleading that it's called a commitment letter because there is no commitment. It's just indicating our interest in participating in the program and our understanding of the conditions of participation. And more importantly, it's going to allow us to have a voice in terms of what types of programs or initiatives are going to be utilized to assist local boards of health in doing our job better.
Seems like all upside, no downside to this.
I would agree.
So is there a motion to authorize
Motion
town
to-
manager to execute the
Second.
letter of interest? All in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Very good.
Thank you.
And last, before our 6:45 appointment, is discussion and approval of special event application of Community Connections for Field Day at Heritage Park, Friday, July 22nd, 9:30 a.m. to 2. Include team races, tug of war, Community Connections, providing tables, et cetera. Is there any comment or concern based on the conditions from the operating departments?
It's great to me.
All right, if not, is there a motion to approve the special event application subject to the conditions by Health Building, DPW, Fire and Police?
Second.
All right, great. All in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, 6:45. I'm happy to welcome former colleagues and professional and personal friends, Commissioner Marty Suberg, Millie Garcia Serrano, the Director of the Southeast Region, Gerard Martin, who runs water programs in Southeast, Maria Pinode, who runs the financing program, and Leldon Langley, who runs the water permitting programs out of the Boston office. We very much appreciate your taking the time out of your schedules to come down and meet with us. I know you've got a presentation, I promise, for travel, Commissioner, that we will let him go by 8, earlier if things go well. So he can make a ferry. I'd rather not have to take him over in my son's boat. We will turn it over to Commissioner Suberg, and then there'll be a discussion opportunity from members of the board and the other board members from other boards in town.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much, and thank you to the board for having us today. We're here to talk about water quality issues. I know your town is familiar. Your town has been doing a great deal of work on these issues, and the types of things we're talking about, we hope and believe are consistent with efforts that communities are making to improve water quality on the Cape. As you indicated, my name is Martin Suberg. I'm the Commissioner of the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection. Millie Garcia Serrano is our Regional Director from the Lakeville office. You identified the rest of our team who will each have a part of the presentation. Moving forward, we do have some slides. We think it's a big area, it's a complicated area, and we want to make sure that it's as easy to follow as possible. These slides will be made available to the board for your use and review.
We have them.
Excellent. Okay, so that's great. So we're here to talk about initiatives that Mass DEP is taking on water quality on the Cape, and are interested in engaging with you as we move forward. We're here to talk about regulatory efforts and a significant funding effort that the Baker-Polito administration has proposed to help communities address these water quality issues. As I know you're all aware, nutrient contamination is one of the most pressing environmental issues facing the Cape. Cape Cod's estuaries are experiencing an excessive amount of nutrients being discharged into sensitive resources, causing eutrophication and prompting the accelerated growth of nuisance plants, weeds, and algae, using up much of the oxygen in the water. This is not only an environmental problem, it ends up being a public health problem, and it ultimately ends up being an economic problem for communities that appropriately value their natural resources and the great interest in the public from all over the world to come see them. The primary water quality problem on Cape Cod stems from nitrogen contamination. Nitrogen from septic systems, wastewater treatment plants, lawns, and stormwater leaches into groundwater and flows underground and is discharged into surface water bodies. While nitrogen comes from a variety of sources, on Cape Cod, the predominant sources are on-site septic systems. Approximately 85% of the wastewater flow into Cape Cod's embayments come from on-site septic systems. Mass DEP has been working closely with Cape Cod communities to address this problem. We collaborated with these communities in the University of Massachusetts through the Massachusetts Estuaries Project to provide communities with scientific studies they need to effectively address specific water quality issues affecting each estuary. These studies, which amply demonstrate the need to take action, are used to form the underlying basis for things known as total maximum daily loads, TMDLs, TMDLs are U.S. Environmental Protection Agency approved calculations of the maximum amount of a pollutant allowed to enter a water body so that that water body will meet and continue to meet water quality standards for that pollutant. A TMDL determines the pollutant reduction targets that can be achievable and allocates load reductions necessary to the sources of those pollutants. There are 30 TMDLs for nitrogen across Cape Cod, generally requiring reductions in nitrogen loads. To facilitate the development of solutions, in 2013, Mass DEP directed the Cape Cod Commission to prepare an update to the 1978 Water Quality Management Plan for Cape Cod, the so-called 208 plan. 208 is a section of the Federal Clean Water Act that governs these types of water quality plans. And so this update was developed, and the plan was certified by Governor Baker and approved by the federal EPA in 2015 after an extensive public participation process. The plan examined the causes of water quality issues on Cape Cod and described options for communities to consider, including new planning tools to make local decisions about potential solutions. Since the updated plan, there have been important steps taken to further assist such efforts, including a new source of ongoing funding proposed by Cape legislators and signed into law by the governor to help towns pay for necessary water infrastructure and water quality remediation projects. This fund, as you all know, is known as the Cape Cod and Islands Water Protection Fund, and it's already providing substantial financial assistance to efforts on the Cape. Mass DEP has also continued to work with the communities to develop and implement wastewater plans, and we have been pleased to see a range of progress across the Cape. I note and have been following the work you've been doing to implement phase 1 of your own wastewater plan here in Mashpee, and we at Mass DEP are eager to continue our collaboration with you as you move forward on that exciting initiative. At the same time, across the Cape, progress has been inconsistent, and ultimately we have the responsibility to ensure that we are taking actions in a timely way to address nitrogen contamination and ensure these resources meet water quality standards. Therefore, we're planning 2 regulatory changes to meet this responsibility. And in a little while, Millie and Gerard will walk us through those approaches. Ordinarily, when we make regulatory changes, we propose a draft rule for public comment, and that is the level of public engagement. In this particular case, we wanted to start early, recognizing how important this issue is, and we wanted to share these concepts with you even before we have a draft rule published, which we would expect to be published later this fall. We want to make sure that we are describing what we're thinking about as a result of ongoing work that Millie and her colleagues have been undertaking to make sure that we put forward the best possible proposal for public comment again in the fall. The 2 regulatory approaches we plan to publish will provide communities choices on how to address pollution affecting our waters. Our work not only involves the regulatory approaches, but as I noted earlier, we have a major funding proposal as well. To help provide some of the immediate funding needs that towns will face moving forward, Governor Baker proposed $200 million in additional funding in a pending supplemental budget for communities that are working on these issues. These funds will help support needed actions over the next several years to improve water quality. I and the Baker-Polito administration will be working to secure passage of this important funding, and we encourage your support as well. You'll also be hearing from Maria Pernod about funding sources available through the State Revolving Fund and Clean Water Trust as well as we move forward on these solutions. So once again, I really want to thank you for the opportunity for us to be here and to talk about the concepts that we're planning to turn into draft rules, to ground truth them as you will, to engage in a discussion, to make sure that we're making progress on water quality improvement, and to make sure that we have your input who ultimately are on the front lines of dealing with this water quality issue in our communities. So with that, I will turn it over now to Millie Garcia-Serrano for some remarks, and then we'll start the slide presentation.
Thank you, Commissioner, and good evening, Chair, and all of the Select Board members and town officials, and the public here who took the time to listen to what Mass DEP has to offer tonight. We really appreciate the opportunity again to be here. As Commissioner Suberg described, what you will be hearing tonight is a two-part process, basically two linked proposals. The first one aims to open up Title V and create a new NSA category, and Gerard Martin, Deputy Regional Director for the Southeast Region Bureau of Water Resources, will be discussing that. The second one is a little bit more involved, as we are seeking to write regulations to codify the process for seeking and obtaining a watershed permit, which, as the Commissioner referred to, as an opportunity to provide more choices to your community as it pertains to mixed alternatives to get at the nitrogen pollution problem. I am pleased to also let you know that we continue to have robust, frank, very open conversation. We have been meeting with every single Cape town. We still need to meet with Provincetown and Truro. They're next. And we're also working with all of the islands, and then also the communities at the other side of the Cape, which also include a little bit of the South Shore, and then the communities to the south along the Buzzards Bay communities. So this is a proposal that will affect both on Cape, islands, and off Cape. We are going to proceed with our presentation. Gerard Martin, again, will present the proposed regulatory framework. We will also talk a little bit about funding opportunities, and then just open it up for comments. And we really, really encourage for you to provide us with questions, whether they're written, oral. We'll accept all the comments, and we look forward to continuing our partnership. Thank you. With that, I hand it over to Mr. Gerard Martin.
Okay, thank you, Millie. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for having us here tonight. As the Commissioner pointed out, we are doing this a little differently than we do most of our reg packages. Not only are we soliciting comments before we put out the draft regs, we reached out to all the towns before we sent you information to let you know what we were doing. In the beginning of June, we contacted all the town managers, town assistants, and all the boards of health to let them know that we were sending them something the following week, which was a letter explaining what we're doing with a fairly detailed fact sheet about what the proposed regulations, what we're thinking the proposed regulations should look like at that time. And then we started our outreach. And so tonight, my presentation is going to kind of go over what the fact sheet included. So to kick it off, we've actually been working on it for a while. Back in 2017, we put together a work group to start working on this, and we recognized that we needed a subcommittee to really focus on some of these issues relative to the nitrogen-sensitive areas. So we pulled together a subcommittee. They've met a few times now and discussed some of these topics that you see up here to help us identify what we might need to do to move forward. Nitrogen-sensitive areas is really not new to the Title V regulations. We already have NSA areas related to water supplies. Okay, so we do have areas where within Zone 2's interim wellhead protection areas, or maybe properties that have both wastewater disposal and water supply. They have to meet certain requirements to maintain that water supply and to make sure that we don't go above the drinking water standard. And that's the loading restrictions of 440 gallons per day per acre. The regulations also allow us to establish NSA areas for sensitive embayments, and that's what we're talking about tonight. So the proposed regulatory framework, we're going to keep those water supply NSA restrictions. That's still important, but it establishes new natural resource area NSAs. And there's two ways to define a natural resource area NSA. The first one is pretty straightforward, and this is what applies to Mashpee. Okay? It's basically any watershed with a TMDL, which the Commissioner explained what that is, and an area-wide 208 plan. Okay, so those are the estuaries in Mashpee. They have both of those. Okay, and the Commissioner also explained what a TMDL was. And I know we've provided the board with the slides tonight, but I believe you also posted them on your website. Are you going to post them on your website? Yes. So folks here, if you want to see those, they will be posted on the website at some point. So again, natural resource areas, all Cape communities, as the commission pointed out, are subject to the 208 plan, and there are 30 watersheds across Cape Cod with EPA-approved TMDLs. 3 of these are in Mashpee, although one of them, Mashpee, the town of Mashpee, is only about 1% of that watershed. So it's fairly de minimis. And for these watersheds, these new NSA regulations go into effect the day the regulations are promulgated and go into effect, because we've already established that there's an issue with those estuaries, and it needs to be addressed sooner rather than later. The second definition, and this doesn't apply to Mashpee, but we've been telling everybody this anyway, so we'll tell you the same thing, is any watershed that has a TMDL or some other scientific indication that the watershed is impaired. And the commissioner mentioned the Mass Estuaries Project. Information from that could be used to determine whether or not that estuary is impaired. And for these watersheds, there's a little bit more work that needs to be done before the regulations kick in. We have to, the TMDLs are pretty straightforward, but we have to have a public process to let the public know that we're planning to go that way. And once the public process is done and DEP designates it as a NSA, then the new regulations would kick in on that. So to simplify it, if you have a TMDL and a 208 plan, the NSA is effective when the regulations go into place. Okay? And I probably should step back a little bit. I know when we were calling the towns and letting them know we were rolling out these regulations, we did put out there a kind of a conceptual time frame. We're collecting concerns and information from the towns during the summer, looking to get draft regulations out probably in October. And this is not your only chance to give us comments, because the draft regulations will also be subject to public comment. So look at what we've done based on what you've said to us, and then there's still an opportunity to discuss that after the fact. And then we're looking to promulgate the regulations after the first of the year. And I think fairly quickly after the first of the year. It's a very aggressive schedule, but we're shooting for it. So in that case, the TMDL and 208 would kick in when the regulations go into place after the first of the year. And then with the other ones, whether it's TMDL and not subject to 208, or we use the Mass Estuary Program data to determine its impaired estuary, the regulations, the timing and the regulations would kick in as soon as we make the designation that it's an NSA. So it would be offset a little bit. And what does it mean to be an NSA? What are the requirements? So it's kind of a choice here. So if it is designated an NSA, any septic system serving new construction or an existing facility has to upgrade to a best available nitrogen reducing technology within 5 years of the effective date of the NSA. So in Mashpee, that's this coming January, February, within 5 years, septic systems have to upgrade to these better septic systems to reduce the nitrogen impacting the groundwater and ultimately impacting the estuary. That's a lot. Or communities can apply for a watershed permit and take a more comprehensive approach to dealing with the nitrogen in the groundwater impacting the estuaries. So what are these best available nitrogen reducing technologies? Well, it could be an alternative system that we've already certified for general use under Title V. Okay, so we've already looked at the data and we think it works and it looks pretty good. And so to reduce the nitrogen below the nitrogen levels that were established for drinking water. The nitrogen levels to repair these estuaries is lower than the nitrogen level for drinking. So it's a little more work to get there. You can also use alternative systems that have been granted provisional or pilot approval by us, as long as the total nitrogen performance value is less than the general use ones that we've approved. And again, this was that big or a couple of slides ago, or you can apply for a watershed permit. Okay. If communities obtain the watershed permit and take a more comprehensive approach to dealing with the nitrogen, the Title V NSA requirement to change out the septic system goes away. Okay. And what is a watershed permit? It's a 20-year permit instead of the traditional 5-year permit. It's issued to local governments, or it could be multiple government bodies working together. And it provides a community with taking a bunch of different approaches to dealing with a nitrogen issue. Standard approaches like sewering, or more innovative approaches like permeable reactive barriers, or maybe agriculture and things like that. So you look at what combination of approaches can help the town of Mashpee, and you might include that in your permit. Utilizes an adaptive management approach. So you're kind of looking at, you come out with your plan, this is what we think is going to work, you implement it, and then you look at it and monitor it to see if it is working and whether or not you need to tweak it as we move along. And the tweaking needs to happen a little sooner when, we can't wait for the 20 years on the permit. So we're looking for good information up front. And it is based on a town-approved watershed management plan. So the watershed management plan is a long-term plan to address the water quality issues. It's based on comprehensive and targeted watershed management plans. And for watersheds where TMDL has been established, the watersheds in Mashpee, it must achieve compliance with the water quality standards at a minimum of 75% of those standards of pollutant reduction within 20 years. So your permit is 20 years long, and you have to show that you're going to get to 70% reduction within those 20 years. This can be modified by approval by us. The permit application itself would include an estimated load reduction needed to meet the threshold concentration for the selected conventional technologies or the alternative approaches, an implementation schedule not to exceed that 20 years, currently envisioned by the applicant, and included in this, I mentioned this a little earlier, kind of up front, what's going to happen in the first 5 years to show that we're going to be able to make it in those 20. Okay. And this will enable you, if in those first 5 years things aren't going quite as expected, it will enable you to change approaches and get there. And it should outline core sewer areas designated for wastewater collection and treatment. In the watershed permit application, if you are going to use alternative approaches, there needs to be a contingency plan. If, when you start monitoring it, it shows that maybe those approaches aren't working, you need a contingency of what do we do to address this. The proposed approach moving forward has to control 100% of the future pollutant loads, and it should include cost estimates for the work that's necessary to do. And I mentioned before, there is some reporting requirements. So the permit provisions will include, again, what the activities are, the schedule. There's also an annual report submittal to us to see how the process is working. And then the big one is that 5-year evaluation to see if the approach needs to be looked at again and maybe modified a little bit. Okay. There are public notice requirements throughout the process. For getting the permit and terminating the permit. And any permits, side permits issued by us, say there was a groundwater discharge permit that was necessary for implementing your plan, that would be referenced in the watershed permit. As I mentioned, there is a public notice. There's notification to let people know that the permit is out there for public review. There's a comment period, and if necessary, there could be a public hearing. The permit team may ask for a public hearing, or we may determine, based on the comments that we get, that it's probably a good idea to have a public hearing. So that is an option as we move forward. We process the watershed permit, modifications, suspensions, revocations in the same manner as the watershed permit. The only time that it differs a little bit is if it involves a change in the schedule. That doesn't necessarily need to go through the public review process. Again, the permit can be terminated by the applicant or revoked by us if things aren't going well. And if it is, then we go back to that situation where we need to look at all the septic systems and upgrade those to the nitrogen-reducing septic systems, as we talked about. And there's timelines associated for that, so it kind of starts the clock on that again. And there is public notice requirements for the termination as well. Okay, so if the permit is terminated, new systems installed after the date of termination needs to be those best nitrogen-reducing systems, and you need to change out the other ones either within 5 years from the effective date of the NSA or 2 years of the date of termination, whichever is longer. So how does this apply to Mashpee? I kind of hinted in the presentation a little bit of where Mashpee might fit in a little bit, but we have this little flow diagram. So will Mashpee have automatic NSA designation? Yes. 208, you have a 208 plant, and your SREs have TMDLs. So automatically puts you in there. Does Mashpee have a watershed that drains to an estuary? Yep, so I already mentioned that. Yes, it does. And so what that means is when the regulations are promulgated, unless a town gets a watershed permit, then the folks within the watershed need to upgrade their septic systems. And this is a slide just depicting the watersheds that we have in Mashpee. And we have the McCoy Bay. You do have a plan in place. And, geez, I can't read this. I'm getting old. Sorry. And no agreement with the adjacent communities. On Papaneset Bay, you do have a plan in place with an agreement with the adjacent communities. So you're in fairly good shape with respect to that. And that concludes my presentation, and I'm going to turn it over to Maria, unless...
Yeah, I just wanted to only comment that specific to the watershed permit, our only experience thus far speaks to a watershed permit that was obtained and sought by 4 communities. We have Brewster, Harwich, Chatham, and Orleans, just at the One Cape Summit back in 2016. They got together, they spoke about the benefits of doing something together. And this permit was, again, sought and issued on August 3rd, 2018. Next year will be their 5-year anniversary of seeking that permit. It's a big year for them to determine if the plan that they set out to do actually is working and whether it warrants modification. So, Mr. Chair, I would advise anyone, if you're interested in contacting any of the town officials within those 4 communities, so you can basically work with them and understand their experience and learn a little bit more about the process. It's working fairly well. They have an IMA, and this particular permit provides for enforcement forbearance as well as nitrogen crediting, which is a very important feature, especially for some communities that want to do a little bit of aquaculture or fertigation or other alternatives that are not necessarily traditional or more conventional technologies. So thank you.
Okay, good evening. It's good to be here. I will be providing a brief overview of the State Revolving Fund program, and I know Mashpee is familiar with this program because you do participate in the program, and also you do participate in the Community Septic Management program. The reason I'm going to talk about this one is because this program has been very successful in meeting the needs of homeowners when they need to replace or repair their failed septic systems. And I do believe that this would be a good model should these new revisions to Title V come through, so we can provide financing for those septic systems. The State Revolving Fund program has been providing loans to communities across the Commonwealth for several decades now. And each year, the program allocates $5 million to provide 2% interest loans to communities to fund their septic loan programs. The average amount of a loan is about $450,000. And this is how the Barnesville County funded their program, and now they operate their own revolving fund, providing loans to homeowners across the Cape. So how does this program work? Mass DEP accepts loan applications on a rolling basis throughout the year. Communities apply when financing demand becomes apparent when homeowners need to replace their systems. And the homeowner's loan is secured through a betterment agreement between the community and the homeowners, but Mass DEP or the Clean Water Trust are not a party to this agreement. The interest that is charged to the homeowner can cover the administrative costs to manage the program, and also whatever funds are left over can be rolled into the program to provide additional loans. The draws made against the loan by the community operate under the Clean Water Trust interim loan program, and therefore it accrues no interest or fees. In most cases, the loans go into repayment within 2 years or sooner if the community has spent all the funds or if it feels that they are done with the program at that time, but they could reapply again should the need become anew in the future. Oops. So in addition to the septic management loan program, the State Revolving Fund program offers low interest rate loans to cities and towns to finance water infrastructure projects that are necessary to comply with the Clean Water or the Safe Drinking Water Acts. Massachusetts expects to receive over $1.1 billion of federal infrastructure funds over a 5-year period through 2026. And to access these funds, participation in the State Revolving Fund program is necessary. These funds provide for added loan capacity for the existing programs, as well as, and this is the most important part, added principal forgiveness to disadvantaged communities. And Mashpee is a Tier 1 disadvantaged community, so you would benefit from these funds. This picture here on the presentation represents the Srf application process and highlighting the main milestones. The Srf program deadlines are established to meet EPA grant commitments and are fairly fixed, but Mass DEP and the trust do work with communities to meet their project needs. The application process begins with a project solicitation that opens at the beginning of July each year and closes in mid-August. This year, it will close on August 12th. When the solicitation period closes, Mass DEP evaluates all the proposals and ranks them based on pre-established criteria to list projects by priority ranking. This is how the intended use plan is developed, and projects that have a significant benefit for water quality do score highly. Because demand for these funds exceeds program capacity, only the projects that appear on the final intended use plan are offered financing. The intended use plan is published at the beginning of the IUP year, and once the IUP is published, the borrowers may go ahead and submit the loan applications, and loan commitments are issued typically by the end of the IUP year. A key deadline that I like to highlight is the June 30th deadline to secure the local appropriation at town meeting, because projects that do not get that approval cannot proceed to secure a loan. And readiness to proceed is key when applying for SRF financing, because projects move quickly, and the project needs to be ready to proceed with construction. This process takes between 18 months to 2 years from a project proposal to when a loan is in place and construction may begin. So planning is key. Please do reach out to me with any questions. I'm always available. And my contact information is included here in the presentation at the end. Thank you. Any
Mind
questions?
advancing? I think we just have one last slide, and the Commissioner's going
Yes.
to wrap up.
Okay, thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you for the time. We put a lot out there, and I recognize that we may have a first round of reactions and questions today, but we're eager to keep the discussion going. In terms of next steps, we're going to continue, as Millie indicated, we're going to continue to meet with towns and organizations. We're looking forward to being at the One Cape Summit. This upcoming week, we'll be having a session with the Cape Cod and Islands Municipal Managers Association. We will continue to put information on our webpage, and we really look forward to the ongoing engagement. And of course, we're going to continue to work to make sure that the $200 million that the governor is seeking for funding to help further launch this effort is successfully passed. So with that, thank you again for having us. We'll pause here for questions and comments.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Commissioner. I appreciate the thoroughness of everybody's presentation and the thought that went into this. We'll start the board. Questions, comments, clarifications? Mr. Cotton?
Sure.
I know where you're going.
All right, so hopefully none of these are dumb questions, but we'll fire away.
No such thing.
All right. So regarding, I'm going to go backwards. So as far as funding, SRF funds. So the SRF funds there was a recommended of 2%, if I heard you correctly. And is that 2%, did that include administrative costs that would be included in that? And some of that is forgiven, depending upon?
Are you talking about the septic management loan program?
Yeah, yes.
Yes, that is the loan that is made to the community, and it covers the 2% loan is what the Clean Water Trust will assess to the community. But the loan the interest rate that the community charges to the homeowner is the funds that you can use to cover administrative costs.
So could be 2% plus maybe another 0.5%
I
to
believe,
cover
yes,
administrative costs?
it's usually a higher percentage, and because the betterment agreement is regulated hold on, I have it here in my notes. There are regulations that manage the hold on.
Like how it's
here.
applied? Maybe I'll go to my
Yes.
next question.
Okay.
And it might come full circle and
Yes,
understand.
yes, go ahead.
So I'm very curious, could we apply for a large amount of, and we don't know what that number is yet, but could we apply for SRF funds to be requested to fund for financial assistance or otherwise for all homeowners in Mashpee to remove all cesspools? So if that was an initiative to say, we want to remove all cesspools in Mashpee, but depending upon their financial means, have these, a pool of money, our SRF funds, to pay for that modification.
Right. And again, that's the value of the funding that the governor is seeking, because it's funding for both activities under the watershed permit as well as, funding the loan program, and making sure that communities have options for that. And I think what it gets to is, the watershed permit itself, your community may come up with a mix of opportunity, a mix of approaches to reduce nitrogen. And so if it's including things like cesspool removals and addressing Title V, we would work with you to support that.
Okay, I love how everyone was like, it was quick nods, and that's great.
So if I could, just because they get what comes in, but the county has applied to the Clean Water Trust to modify the community septic program that they administer on our behalf to have a sliding scale interest rate for septic upgrades, cesspool elimination, and sewer connections. So that if you were a homeowner who got a loan through the community septic program through the county, and you made 120% of area median income or less, you'd have a 0% interest loan. If you had between 120 and 180%, you get a 2% loan, and then people with incomes over 180 would get a 4% loan. So, and then the governor's proposal parlays off of that, anticipates that passing, and offers 50% principal forgiveness on the loan for people at 120 AMI or below, 25% at 120 to 180%.
No, is
and
that passed?
Huh?
Is
It's
that-
pending before the legislature, before the end of the session. So it goes where you're headed with your question, but it does it through the countywide program, not specific to Mashpee.
Which is all great, I don't want to assume that that's, I hope that's still coming, but, you know, legislation and the whole thing, I want to move forward, and if we have to do it ourselves, I mean, I would be one of 5 people that right now that say, let's do this. So, if you don't mind, can I
Keep going.
have a few more? All right, so I think you did mention that the $200 million that was set aside by Governor Baker, and I know that's going to be, he will no longer be in office, so there's always that chance of change of governor that may go away. I hope that doesn't happen, but is that just for Cape Cod, or as I understand, it's South Shore and Cape Cod?
The $200 million is for communities that are under the 208 plan, and it's not passed yet. We're working to get it passed, and presumably if it is passed, that money would be available going forward. But it is limited by its terms to communities that are operating under a 208 plan. So and that are part of the Cape and Islands Trust Fund that passed, which Mashpee is a member of. So.
Okay. You mentioned imposes loading restrictions of 440 gallons per GPD per acre. Can you tell me what, again, I'm down here, I have no idea what that would consist of?
I think that was referring to the existing, well, you're here.
Yes, it is.
Okay. You're here.
That actually applies to the water supply NSA. So that's what we came up with as the limit for water supplies to keep the impact of the groundwater below 10 milligrams per liter, which is the drinking water standard for nitrates. It doesn't apply to the new estuary NSAs. That is really dependent on the TMDLs and what needs to be done to reduce the nitrogen in those estuaries.
So 440 is about 4 bedrooms per acre,
Right.
right?
Right.
So
That's
it's a standard that's basically your health agent is quite familiar with that standard because they enforce Title V locally. So that's pretty much what the guiding principle there.
Okay. Another one, would any of these regulations, I know it sounds like we have to make our own plan for the 70% reduction. So that being said, it doesn't necessarily mean Title V goes away, or it doesn't?
No, Title V doesn't go away, but the watershed permit controls. And again, there might be a lot of elements in the watershed permits. The particular requirement, if you did not have a watershed permit, then the NSA rules apply. And every Title V system in that NSA would have to upgrade. If you have a watershed permit, it's what the town develops as approaches. And so you don't have that automatic, everybody has to do that. But, again, the watershed permit is based on the fact that the town is developing solutions that will get to a level of reduction that equals that 75% over 20 years.
Okay, one last question, and I'll leave it up to everybody
No,
else.
this is
Sorry.
great.
So, and I understand if you're in a watershed, you're in a watershed, I get that. Now, can the town apply for an entire town, like a watershed permit?
Yes.
So I did hear that correctly.
Yes. You can apply by yourself. I apologize. You can have one application for just that one town, or if you share watersheds, you can reach to your neighbors and enter into an IMA. And therefore, the permit will govern all the transactions as per the IMA agreement. There's cost efficiencies and ways to maximize and attain and attack the problem just with your neighbors.
Perfect, thank you. Sorry.
No, all good questions. Carol, do you have any questions?
No, I'm good.
David?
One question that I have is, listening to the presentation, it's heavily relative to nitrogen loads. And, out here in Mashpee-Wakeby Lake and some of the other ponds, phosphorus is a huge problem. And how does that factor into your new policies and regulations?
You're right. And, because of all the information we have on nitrogen, this is a nitrogen-specific approach, but we recognize that there's work that needs to be done on phosphorus pollution as well. And I do think that, for example, a town like yours that's developing these kinds of solutions, if you're reducing the impacts of these types of systems through, the combinations of sewering and other approaches, I would expect that you'd see some benefits as well to those water bodies that are affected by phosphorus. But, this particular approach is nitrogen-oriented, but again, where you're tackling the problems of septic systems, I imagine you would see, particularly, with some of the approaches we're talking about, like sewering, you would see a benefit also in terms of phosphorus and issues related to that.
So these new proposals are specific to coastal areas, not so much inland waters, and
right, contributing
surface waters.
Right.
Yeah, so I'm going to just add another point to what the commissioner stated. The Title V is very much linked to nitrogen, which is why opening up Title V only gets at the nitrogen. But when you look at the watershed permit process, which is what we've been talking a little bit about, it really, the backbone of that permit, it really relies on either your targeted or your comprehensive watershed plan, which looks not just with regards to nitrogen, but a wide variety of pollutants. So that is how we look at it a little bit more differently and more comprehensively through that particular process. And then just another quick note on phosphorus. There's very limited technology at this moment with regards to IA systems that are very specific to phosphorus. The science continues to move forward, and we continue to work with Brian Baumgartel from the Barnesville County. And we are looking forward for opportunities of IA systems that would do the same thing as the ones that are being currently tested for nitrogen.
So, because a lot of my concerns are focused around not only the estuaries and the bays, but also we have one of the deepest lakes on Cape Cod, and we're getting the cyanobacteria year after year. After COVID, we have more year-round residents. Mm-hmm. The environment's screaming out loud mm-hmm. that it can't handle the phosphorus and year-round residency. So, my concerns are larger than just the coastal areas. They are, an abundant resource that we rely upon as, Cape Cod communities with shellfishing and all the life that thrives in there. But, the rivers are bad. The Brian Howe's report stated our rivers are dying. The Quashnet and Mashpee River are dying. Now we're getting the cyno blooms in June, the front end of summer. When it's one of the deepest lakes and the water should be colder. So, these are all concerns. Another question that I have is with regards to, you're aiming for 20-year cleanup, 75%. How often are you evaluating the effectiveness of these regulations to see where you need to encourage and tweak it at the state level to further achieve the goals?
Okay, so sure. So our working experience, again, relies on the work from the Pleasant Bay communities. We have the 4 communities. As you may have seen, part of the proposal is to have annual reporting. So every year, there's a report. They work under an approved permit with monitoring wells, including sentinel wells, and a wide variety of parameters are measured. And in the case of the watershed permit, you also look for phosphorus, by the way, Mr. Whedon. So that's the beauty of the watershed permit process. Then you have the 5-year big year to really understand if the projections that you began with actually did take root, and actually the selected alternatives, whether they were a combination of traditional, non-traditionals, really aimed at that target. The 5-year point is when you start tweaking and determining whether it's failing, your plan is failing, or if it's succeeding. And often we found out that through the experience of the Pleasant Bay communities, they're actually ahead of the schedule, which is great because their permit was originally, I believe, for 30 years. So we're working with those communities because now we need to make some adjustments if we actually end up with a permit that is a 20-year permit. Some of the communities will have to think about, boy, whether it was for financing purposes or whether it was for resonating with the levels of contamination. If they now need to move into a 20-year window, we're working hand in hand with them to ensure that we can either move forward with the 20 or adjust the schedule as needed. So there are a lot of checks and balances, again, to summarize, annual reviews, and then culminating in 5-year reviews over the course of 20 years.
What are those communities?
Sure.
What are they doing to improve?
Oh, it's a mix of things. Pleasant Bay actually has a little bit of Chatham, is really mostly sewering. We have Brewster with some fertigation and land use controls. We have aquaculture, there's floating wetlands, there's permeable reactive barriers, and it's been really exciting to watch that work. And I know, just working with my former DP colleague, he's been instrumental in that conversation. The same goes for Wellfleet. Currently, they just developed a plan, and also it's a mix of things. It's a very exciting project, and they're moving forward with conversations with Truro and Eastham. So in our estimation, it seems like the towns are leaning mostly towards the watershed permit because it gives them a little bit more opportunity for a wide variety of strategies, and some alternative innovative strategies that are go beyond or just a little bit different than your traditional.
Do you do any more?
The funding through the SRF is great and everything, but, I'm wondering, with these developing offshore wind industries, there's a huge amount of money that the federal government's getting as a beneficiary. So, I call into question, their objectivity as to the scoping and permitting of the projects. But, how is the state trying to get a piece of the pie that comes from that? Because these projects are all within coastal areas up and along, they're going to go around the entire continental United States. How is the state trying to do anything when they're entering to power purchase agreements with these foreign companies and conglomerates to try to get program funds that will supplement this SRF fund? I think a lot of the offshore wind funding that the federal government is going to get ends up going into the Land and Water Conservation Fund, and then trickles down to the clean water funding. But, there should be direct funding to the coastal communities that these projects are outlining, in my opinion. And I'm just inquiring, is there any kind of effort at the state level to do that sort of thing?
I'll take your comment about whether there's specific mitigation on wind energy, back with us and take it as a comment that you're making. I would point out that we are getting over $1.1 billion from the infrastructure money. That is all federal money. That is an addition that will very much help these projects in terms of, first of all, the amount of money we have, the amount of subsidy that communities receive, and, again, the $200 million that the governor proposed, which is also coming from the ARPA money as he proposed it. Again, these provide important opportunities. So I take your point. There's a lot of need for funding. We will continue to look for available opportunities. But, we do have sources of money right now that are significant sources of money that I think will give us a good start.
My only concern is that, we have 10 projects that just in the North Atlantic. They're already starting to go into the Mid-Atlantic region, but there's 10 projects right outside of Massachusetts, Rhode Island waters that, we don't even know what the effects of these projects are going to be. Everything's being rushed to get off fossil fuel. I encourage the effort, but at the same time, there's a lot of things that should have been done ahead of time in homework. And, I just don't want to miss opportunities as a developing industry. This is going to be a $70 billion industry, and, states need to speak up and try to address these coastal regional problems because the cost of implementing wastewater infrastructure is a substantial cost for everyone. But, as we lean forward towards blue economies and all that sort of thing, that's the trend. Everything's going to be, kind of blue economy driven. Who wants to live in waters that aren't clean and taking 20 years to clean them up? That doesn't set well with me, or my children, grandchildren for that matter. But I'll leave it with that. Thank you.
Tom, do you have any questions?
I do.
Shoot.
So one of the things that you brought up earlier in the conversation was the nitrogen and the pollutants that were coming out of wastewater treatment systems. And we have some major systems here within the town, and unfortunately, the discharge is just above the water. The Mashpee River for one, and the oceans, I'm sure it's not a problem where it hits the bay and it will dissipate easily, but when it hits the river, it becomes stagnant. And I was kind of surprised by that because I would have thought that would have been addressed, and you seem to indicate that there's a substantial amount of nitrogen that is hitting the water, and as well as phosphorus. So what are you doing to move forward on that? And that's something where you can take, here I am, I'm thinking that these systems were up and running and doing everything that they were supposed to do, and everything was going to be wonderful. And now I hear that that's not the case at all. There are serious problems there. Are you pushing that to try to get them to upgrade those systems? Are there, the big ones are Mashpee Commons, the golf clubs, those communities there. They have the system. They were probably trying to do the right thing, and now there's a problem with it. How are we making that? That would be, to me, a primary source to go to right away and correct that issue and help us to reestablish our bays, rivers, and estuaries. And I want to go into another one after you explain this.
Yeah, you're right. Nitrogen comes from a variety of sources, but we also do know the tremendous contribution. I think 85% Cape-wide, and I think those numbers, reflect, communities. 85% of it is coming from septic systems. This is a big issue that we need to address. There are permits, wastewater treatment permits. Yes, we need to make sure that for the wastewater treatment facilities, they are staying up to current standards. But our focus based on the science is that, we really need to address this issue caused by the contribution of these on-site septic systems.
I'm just only going to say, Mr. O'Hara, that we heard the same comment actually from Yarmouth and also Brewster. So I appreciate what you're saying, and I think it gets to groundwater discharge permits, primarily for private systems. So I believe that the permit speaks to 10 milligrams per liter. And the question was, would Mass DEP find it beneficial to re-look at the discharge limit? So I appreciate your comment.
Thanks. One of the other things that I'm very familiar with, my property backs up to the Mashpee River. The Mashpee River here is a beautiful location. Everything about it is beautiful, except when you step out of your kayak or your boat and you're in 2 feet of muck in the bottom. And that's not a joke. That's 2, if not more at times. And I don't see, and nobody wants to allow us, we tried to have that dredged and remove that muck and give the river a chance to fight on its own and get up and running. And we come up with the same problem, which is the spoils. Where do you put the spoils? Nobody wants the spoils. But how do we help the river to help itself? I mean, where does the state stand on this? I mean, we all give it a try, and nothing happens because it's just a dead issue. Nobody wants to address it. How can we get these rivers dredged? I think we ought to be supporting dredging, and where we put the spoils, it's not easy, but we need to let it dry out and truck it away later. I don't know, but you must have to have dealt with this in some areas.
Yeah, first, one of the best things we can do for these water bodies is to address the pollution that's coming in the first instance, stop the harm, if you will,
Right.
mitigate the harm. And that's what these regulations are designed to do. Dredging ends up being a very, site-specific type of situation. There's, you need to look at the particular water body. What do we know about the particular area that we're in? Will dredging, how dredging could be done. We do have an issue with spoils. We do have an issue with, addressing where the materials go. I know there have been some dredging projects. Again, it may be different than here where you're talking about, this type of muck situation. I guess I'm not in a position where I could give kind of a one-size-fits-all answer, but if there were projects that people wanted to take a deeper discussion in, we could do that. But to me, the best thing we can do to start with is to make sure that the contributions that create this problem and make this problem worse are being addressed so that the river has a chance to start healing, or the water body has a chance to start healing.
Right. And I agree with that. The only problem is, even though we're looking at putting in wastewater systems all over with a centralized system and collection system, but it's going to be years down the road.
Right.
It'll be 10,
Right.
15 years down the road. That doesn't help anything in the near future.
Right.
And I'd love to have the alternative systems that are now presenting themselves. They're very effective in removal of the nitrogen and phosphorus, and I think they had included bark mulch. Bark mulch has become very effective in removing some of these pollutants.
Right.
It neutralizes them. So, I mean, there are certain things that we could do immediately, but I don't know that nobody's coming up with funding for people that might live along the waterways or within a certain proximity. If we could get some funding in those areas there. And that's why I didn't start off with, my question was initially, I asked about the wastewater treatment system at the larger facilities, because they're in existence, their proximity to the waterways are very close. You can get a bigger bang for your buck, I would imagine, if the pollutants are coming in through those systems. So those are the questions I had, but anything you can move forward. And the dredging would be very important to the town and in different rivers as well.
Right. We take those both as questions and comments, as we consider our regulatory approach.
Great.
So
Thank you.
I had a couple questions, but also just so you know, the town's plan, as it currently configured, recognizes that dredging the river without stopping, as you rightly pointed out, the introduction of additional nitrogen, because it doesn't increase the tidal flow change at the mouth of Papaneset Bay, will actually make water quality conditions worse, not better. So we're not, as our current plan does not pursue dredging of the Mashpee River, because you're just making the nitrogen-laden bathtub deeper and holding more nitrogen without allowing it to leave at the mouth of the bay. So a couple questions to pick up. I appreciate my colleagues' questions because they covered a lot of things I was thinking. I just wanted to ask, if a town proposed a watershed permit that achieved compliance faster than 20 years, there's nothing that limits, in the department's view, the ability of a town to accelerate cleanup. You're talking about minimums, not maximums, right?
That's correct, and we would be delighted to work with a town like that. Yep.
Okay, that's one. Second one is, is it the department's view that if a town chose not to pursue a watershed permit, and the NSA requirement of alternative septic systems went into effect, given the performance of existing and under development nitrogen-reducing systems, do you have an expectation that at the end of the day, that expense would result in the restoration of the embayments to meet the TMDL standard or not?
I have to say that, the Title V regulations are the tool we have. And they provide us something to start addressing that problem. I personally believe that, towns like yours, towns like others that are pursuing the watershed permits with the targeted plans where they really have designed approaches where we have a good sense of where the reductions are coming. It seems like that is a very prudent course to take. Going system by system, we're doing the best we can with this approach. We will get some reduction, but communities like yours are more likely to, and I believe we'd have a greater degree of confidence in terms of making sure that we're achieving the targets that I think we all want to achieve.
Okay. So not to put words in your mouth, but to attempt to. Since most of the IA systems look like they're not going to do better than 10 milligrams per liter, municipal treatment gets you down to 3. 3 is roughly what the TMDLs require as a general rule. If we relied on IA systems in totality, we'd be discharging roughly 10 over time, which is still, it's better than 19, better than 26, not enough to meet the standard of 3. Fair?
Yes.
Thank you. If a town wanted to include measures in a watershed permit that resulted in the reduction in nitrogen through a variety of measures, as well as targeted sewering around ponds to eliminate the phosphorus load from the properties around the ponds, is that the type of thing that would be allowable under a watershed permit?
Yes, you said that far better than I was articulating it before, yes.
Okay. And just because the watershed permit says 20 years, 75% of the goal, the need to meet the ultimate TMDL doesn't go away, right? So
that's correct.
You're in compliance and therefore sort of immune from enforcement or litigation if you achieve that, but you still need as a community to know that that last 25% has to come presumably in the next watershed permit, right?
Right. That's right. We need to make sure that, progress needs to be measurable. We need to make sure that we're achieving it with benchmarks. But yeah, as you know, this, when we're implementing TMDLs, this is DEP, but it's not just DEP. This is the federal program. We have to meet those water quality standards. And so, yes, at 75% over 20 years, you're in compliance, but the goal is to meet the TMDLs.
Okay. And if a town, I think you were going this direction, but just to be clear from Ms. Cotton's questions, if a town came in with a watershed permit application and said, we're going to sewer A, B, and C, we're going to use aquaculture over here, maybe we'll do some other stuff over there, we think we can meet the goal, but in addition, for the areas that ultimately aren't going to get sewered, if we put in a local requirement to have the elimination of cesspools or the upgrading of remainder Title V systems that we don't anticipate becoming sewered in a reasonable time period, like the duration of the first watershed permit, we could include a provision saying all cesspools got to come out, all non-sewered areas within a given period of time need to upgrade. That would be an acceptable local decision that you could potentially sanction as part of watershed permit.
Yeah, again, that's, yes. And we're working with communities that are looking at a mix of approaches, and if that's what works for that particular community, yes, that would be consistent with a watershed permit.
Okay.
Wellfleet actually has something akin to what you're describing, Mr. Chair, which is their own bylaws that have some parallel construction to our thinking as well.
And the last thing, you didn't speak to it tonight, but were a town like Mashpee or others to pursue a watershed permit that had a comprehensive set of things that included treatment, aquaculture, alternative septic systems, would that whole package fit within the way you're proposing to prioritize through Maria's reg changes on the SRF? Would we consider ourselves highest priority in the Commonwealth for funding compared to other communities, given the way you're allocating points?
Yes.
That's a recurring question, and the answer has been yes.
Okay, so we put ourselves in a much better position to access that 1.1 billion in federal money over the next couple of years by moving forward with a watershed permit.
I believe there are a lot of benefits to a watershed permit.
Okay. All right.
Very good.
You have we have 5 minutes.
Okay.
Does anyone of the board members from other boards or commissions, president or staff in the town have any questions that you didn't get answered adequately? Dennis, you got to come up to the mic. Everybody at home needs to hear you, Dennis.
Dennis Balzerini, I have a question. If we go with that plan and our watershed share with different communities, let's say Sandwich don't go with the plan and they're still polluting our rivers, how can we meet the 75%? I think it'd be better if we got every town that's connected to the watershed go for that plan that you were talking about. So is that what we're looking at, or each town's going to be fighting against each other? I think with this.
We're encouraging partnership, and that's really what we're doing. We've seen how during the course of our conversations, there is keen interest in ensuring that all the communities partner with each other. But just in case that happens, watershed permits can be issued to just one town, and then DEP needs to address the issue as to why the neighbor's not doing their job.
All right, so we try best to meet that 75%, but like Barnesville and Sandwich, in that area that their watershed connects to ours, they're saying, we're not going to worry about that, we're worrying about this part of the town.
Right.
Dennis, we have an agreement for load sharing with Barnstable and Sandwich for Papaneset. We've had discussions with Falmouth and Sandwich about Wacoit, but do not yet have an agreement.
Oh, okay. And my other question, you talked about these alternative systems. And you said within 5 years, we'll see if they're working. Say I put a new alternative system in, 5 years it's not working. What do? I have to pay for another system? I mean, that's not fair.
That's a great question. We are hearing that directly from individuals like you. Thank you for putting that together, because that's something for Mass DEP to take home with and work on that issue.
I hope they do, because that's very important.
There's also the point of change in science, so that's the other one. So we understand.
Because I went to that place 20 years ago, they do the alternative system. And I went with John about 4 months ago, and they still haven't approved it. And we have a few now. But from 20 years, what are they doing? I don't understand how come they haven't approved it.
All right, Dennis, I'm going to give Drew had the one other question. Let me move to him.
Okay,
Thank you. Thank you so much. So noted.
He asked your question? All right, Christine, you get the last word.
So a common question I'm getting in the Board of Health from folks who have heard about these proposed regulations is, should we hurry up and get our permit and we'll be grandfathered in for our standard Title V systems? And I really want to be honest with these folks and give them, good advice. So I don't know if it's a question for the Select Board or how we should treat current
I'll let the commissioner take that
applications.
one.
Yeah, the way the new rules would work is if you are a Title V system in one of these nitrogen-sensitive areas and there is no watershed permit, again, it's different if there's a watershed permit and there's a mix of solutions the town does, but if there's not, you know, the systems, a new system would have to be installed with that heightened technology, the innovative technology, and existing systems would need to be addressed. So, you know, I don't, as we're contemplating it, there's not a grandfathering provision. There's not a
So we
a
should be
provision for
encouraged-
existing systems.
Should we be encouraging folks right away to look at the IA systems?
No, what you should be encouraging people to do is to encourage us to apply for watershed permit, because that relieves the burden on the individual to the greatest extent possible. The whole structure of this, I think it's fair to say, is you set this up, it moves the needle in a way that has been lacking and much needed for 30 years. Title V got improved and updated in 1994, the last time. But it only takes it so far. What I interpret you to be saying with these regs is towns should be getting watershed permits because it gives you the best chance at the lowest cost with the fairest allocation of cost for the homeowner to do it that way. And if towns don't act, it falls to the homeowner to incur the entire cost of the solution on a one-off basis. Is that fair?
Yes. You know, we are, you know, again, Title V is the tool that we have to use as the backstop to get reductions. But what we're seeing in terms of communities that are working on watershed permits, you know, all the benefits that you just outlined are evident. And again, there's ways, you know, we are really looking to support those communities to move forward in that kind of approach.
Great. I want to thank you all for coming in and providing such a thoughtful presentation and answering all our questions to the best of your ability. It's very helpful. It's 8 o'clock. I really don't want to drive you back across Nantucket Sound, so I'm going to let you go so you can meet your ferry.
Well, okay.
But I think that, you know, it's fair to say that there'll be a lot of questions, and we do appreciate the opportunity. Millie and Gerard and the regional folks have always been extremely accessible to us, and we'll continue that conversation as we move forward and look forward to working with you on draft regs. Thank you very much.
We look forward to it as well, and thank you for having us
Thank
tonight.
you. Have a safe trip home, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just take a second so they can gather their things before we move to next. Night, Marty. Okay, next, we have a series of discussions, interviews, and possible improvement of appointments to Sewer Commission. We have 4 applicants. They're presented to the board in the order in which they applied. Seems as good as any. I know that 3 of the applicants have had an opportunity to meet with Sewer Commission, and we've been provided their recommendation to appoint. I asked them each to come in, and I'd like to just have a little bit of an opportunity. I had some questions. I don't know what other board members did about it to any of them. So if people are amenable, if we could just do them one at a time. Mr. Smith, do you mind? Come on down.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Great. So I don't know if you want to just give a little quick intro of your interest in the commission, and then if there are questions board members have, they can ask them.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, I think most of you know me, but I'm Chad Smith. I was recently stepped down as the chairman of Conservation. On Conservation, we're really fortunate. We have a deep bullpen, so to speak. We have a lot of really good people, and I'm happy to offer my help with Sewer Commission, where we do have a need for some people in town to step in and do the work. Beyond that, we have spent a lot of time, most of our time, as you're the liaison to our Conservation Commission, addressing these issues of septic, approving septic, where IA systems might be appropriate, and sometimes lacking the teeth to push for a little more stringent application of a sewer proposed septic, excuse me. So honestly, it would alleviate a lot of frustration of mine to be able to help with the sewer commission. It's a pressing issue. It's been a pressing issue for my 6 years on the commission, and I see a better fit for myself if I could leave the Conservation Commission in good hands. I would likely ask to step down and be an associate member there so I can devote my full efforts to the sewer commission.
Thank you. Any questions for Chad? I have one.
Yes, sir.
What's your thought on timelines of in the existing plan, moving to the next phases, and specifically your willingness to incorporate modifications to address the water quality in the lakes sooner than later as part of phase 2?
After what I've heard tonight, I agree with your statement on the Watershed application. I believe we could push ahead a little bit further than we could with better resources to get to phase 2. Our lakes, Mr. Whedon earlier, agree completely with the issues we're having with phosphorus in our lakes, and there is, like a presenter said, unsettled science. But it is getting researched, and I think with working with the state and particularly partnering with not just the surrounding towns, but who has more knowledge of cleaning up our waters right now than the Air Force. I think they could be a powerful ally if we were able to reach out.
So just to be clear, would you be willing to incorporate dealing with the lakes into a revised phase 2?
I would be in full support of it.
Thank you. Any other questions? Hearing none, is there a motion on Mr. Smith's application to the,
To approve, Ms.
I'll second
that.
okay? Do we have terms, duration terms?
We should. We don't?
Not on this, but.
Because we're not,
Like 3 years.
because we're not going by precincts at this point, because we've been vacant for a period of time.
We do not.
All
I
right.
think we can fill those in as they're appointed, where they happen to be in the process.
The other thing too
They'll be
is
staggered.
They would stagger like they do.
we don't necessarily have to fall by precinct as a result of the bylaw pertaining to the sewer commission. When we've posted and advertised as we have, and you have enough candidates, you don't have
Precincts
to
go
go
out
by
the window,
precinct.
but there are terms.
Yes, and I don't have that info in front of me.
I would only recommend if Chad is approved, that maybe because he was stepping down from other commissions and other
about the
positions.
longest remaining
That he takes
term?
the longest remaining term.
Yes.
You take that as an amendment to your motion, Carol?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Is that amenable to you?
Absolutely, Mr. Chairman.
All right, we have a motion to appoint and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mrs. Sprout?
Good evening.
Good evening. Nice to see you all.
Good to see you. Thank you for your interest. Same thing. You want to just give a little bit of a introduction as to your interests and approach to this?
Yeah, I moved into Mashpee in 1974 and also had a chance to live on Secaucet, so became very aware of the pollution problems, and that was before the building boom. So you have to wonder, things are more sensitive than we thought. And then I've lived on Quiniquisette Avenue since about 1975, one side of the other. And because we had the farm, we also do, a lot of water testing, and so far our water's been good, high in iron, but it's very common on the Cape. Water quality is something that we have to deal with all the time because we use drip irrigation. We have liquid fertilizer that goes through dosatrons at precise amounts, like 200 parts per million. And because we have a well, our water doesn't react with chemicals that might be in the town water supply that would react with fertilizers and things. But yeah, we're very conscious of water quality, and the sewering is something that just needs to be done. We've got to clean this up because I live so close to the river. I walk down there and I look at the river, and yes, it's muddy, it's mucky, and I don't want to see it die.
Questions for Ms. Sprout?
I've got a couple easy ones, but I think you just give a different perspective, working from a farm perspective of understanding of, clean soils and water. I mean, I think you brought up a couple good points. I guess my one question would be would you be in favor of banning all cesspools in the town of Mashpee?
Well, cesspools are definitely an old technology, and we definitely have to go up from there. We can rise. I can remember when our septic system with the cesspool failed, and they came out and they said, it failed. Where should we put the new one? And they looked around and they went up the hill and they said, right there. That was the total engineering. It took 2 minutes. And because we're basically in a big sandbox, it worked. But yeah, we got to clean the cesspools up, but I don't know how this would work within the plan, within the watershed plan, how you want to prioritize things. Do you want to take them as each system fails? Do you want to go in and say, no, this is an area where all the cesspools have to go? This is a decision that has to be made by a board or one of the boards. Yeah. Did I answer your question?
No.
No. You want me to come out with a flat answer and say, I want to get rid of all the cesspools?
I guess it's just your personal opinion. Would you be in favor of getting rid of the cesspools in Mashpee?
I'm in favor of it. I just want to make sure that it's fair, and it's efficient, and it's effective. Okay?
Now you've answered my question.
All right.
Thank you.
Any other questions? David?
None at this time.
Carol?
I'm good.
Phyllis, do you have any hesitations or concerns about whether the science around septic nitrogen being the primary cause of water quality problems? Do you have any
No,
questions about that being settled science?
That's pretty much settled science. I don't see another source of nitrogen that's so prevalent. It's definitely the sewer systems.
Okay.
The septic, not sewer.
I'll ask you the same question I asked Chad. Are you in favor of expanding Phase 2 to include sewering around the lakes?
I'd like to see us get through Phase 1 first before we talk about Phase 2. Yeah, we need some special attention to the lakes. The phosphorus, from what I understand, a lot of it is existing in the sediment, and the sewering will only tackle the additional phosphorus. So I don't know how we're going to actually handle the phosphorus that's currently in the sediment.
But how do you solve the problem if you don't stop the inputs?
Yeah, you have to, well, the input is there, but how much of the sediment, the phosphorus in the sediment is already there? I think my question to you is, if we stop the input, will it have the impact that you want, or should we find a way to address the phosphorus that's already there?
Why not do both?
Yeah, we have to. Eventually, we have to do both.
So to get clarity on your answer, are you suggesting that we shouldn't begin the design or potential expansion of this Phase 2 until Phase 1 is complete and operational?
I don't have enough information right now to answer that question.
But you said that you want to see Phase 1 done before we start thinking about Phase 2.
Well, like I said, I don't have enough information about the borderline between Phase 1 and Phase 2 to answer your specific question.
What would help you make that decision?
A lot more reading.
I have to say, I have concerns, given rise to some of the comments I've heard you make about the unsettled nature from your perspective on climate science. And I'm concerned about those views and how they play into the discussion about phosphorus and nitrogen and the application of those scientific discussions to our solutions. Am I wrong?
Are you talking about global warming? When you say climate science, I'd like you to define your terms a little better.
I'm talking about doubts you've raised in public meetings about the human influence on global climate change.
Global climate. Are you talking about global warming? Because I don't see that having an influence on this discussion for this position.
Why not? Are not warmer waters that contain less oxygen or less hospitable to aquatic life and give rise to greater levels of cyanobacteria in the ponds? So why is not warming a relevant factor in dealing with the environment that we're living in right now?
I'm just saying that there are people that say they look at the collection of data about global warming, and there's a wide spectrum of people that say that data is leading to dangerous conditions, and others say that it is consistent with fluctuations that have been looked at for hundreds of years.
Okay, so the majority of science says this, a minority of science says this, but they're equivalent, so many people say.
I'm not saying that.
Well, that's what I'm hearing. I mean, this is my concern, that something that is largely, I think, is largely settled science, largely non-controversial science, despite the fact that there are persistent voices out there bringing questions to the table that obscure the reality, that I'm concerned that perspective be brought onto the Sewer Commission, and then we're going to start hearing questions about the role of phosphorus and nitrogen in our water quality, and that we're not going to be focused on solutions. And I find, for that reason, I can't support your candidacy.
Mr. Chair, if you don't mind.
Yes, sir.
So I can understand what you're saying, but I also say I agree with, I like the idea of a difference of opinion and that perspective, and it's also done in a very respectful manner. So you just had a dialogue about global warming, and it's obviously you're maybe on both ends of the spectrum, but I also seen that dialogue go back and forth respectfully. So that is what I appreciate, and I do want a difference of opinion, and I don't want people to look at it one way, like full speed ahead. I don't want people to say, stop, and it's just, the way I look at things, I'm looking for someone that is willing to.
You are the middle child, John.
I am.
So
to that point, but I like how you.
You both did it. You both did it very well.
That's fine, but I guess at the end of the day, my view is that we just listened to what we listened to. I think there was a general consensus about accelerating, not slowing, our approach to this. And I see no value other than an intellectual exercise that, at the end of the day, isn't worth anything, to go back and revisit questions about nitrogen and phosphorus being the source of problems for our wastewater, because all that will do is slow us down. And I just think we have a plan, we have some potential modifications to that plan, and I think you heard fairly definitively from the Commissioner what the sources and reasons for that are, and I actually have no interest in going back and revisiting that discussion. We spent 30 years having that discussion, and we are where we are. And people have said it's taken too long, and all that discussion will do is take too long. Wow. So anyway, I'm 1 of 5.
So one question I have, so in your own personal opinion, what kind of background, insight, and experience do you feel as though you would bring to the Sewer Commission to make informed decisions?
I don't bring a lot of technical expertise in sewer and water quality. I'm just bringing the average citizen looking at this issue because it affects every average citizen in this town, whether you are close to the water or not. It is so important that we go ahead and move as quickly as possible, because you're right, 30 years is plenty of time to get it right. And Title V just isn't doing the job, as much as we would like to think that it's helped, but it hasn't helped enough. And we've got the rivers, the lakes, and all our coastal areas that prove it. So yes, we have to move forward quickly, efficiently, scientifically, yes. But like I said, I'm just the average person, and I probably take more of an overview, but the presentation this evening was fantastic, and I'm so glad that I was here and had a chance to look at it at the same time as all of you, because I wasn't aware of the Watershed project, and I think it's one of the most interesting and innovative ways that we can tackle this problem of wastewater and nitrogen and phosphorus pollution.
Anything else, David? No. Tom?
Yeah, I want to say that I respect, Andrew asked you specific questions, and all you said was you need more time to look at that information. You didn't say no. So I was very surprised at that it's, if you don't have the knowledge or you don't have the information, you take the time to, and I like that. I thought that was very well put, and you did it handled it in a very nice manner. What I heard was, from while you were talking, is that you present yourself in a way that you're representative of the people of Mashpee, looking out for their interests. Am I
Yes, this is true, yes.
And I thought that was very good. So you're not saying no, you're not saying yes, but you want to be representative of the people. And the more when you're on the board and you're taking all this information in, it only works to the benefit of the residents.
Absolutely.
I like you for that. I think that was very well done.
I like that you stood up to do this, Phyllis. And I make a motion to approve Phyllis on this committee.
I'll second that.
All right. Those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? I'm opposed.
I'm opposed.
You are appointed.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Phyllis.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Mr. Fidala.
Hello, everybody.
Hi, Tom.
Oh, Tom.
Why do you want back in?
Well, two reasons. It seems like things have sort of fallen apart since I left last time. And the other reason is because the town manager asked me to apply, so I think he understands that they could use some, I've been working on cleaning the waters for 38 years in Mashpee. Obviously, I helped create the sewer commission. I was on it for 33 years, and I was enjoying my respite from the sewer commission, taking trips all over the world, but duty calls, and so I'm here. And I can actually answer a lot of the questions that some of you guys had, because I've been through the entire development of the plan and the MEP and all the rest. So, and I've actually put together the SRF applications until recently. So I know the business, and I know the plan, and I know what you're talking about with phosphorus. What's really disappointing is there hasn't, what would be the ideal is to get some kind of an on-site system would do with phosphorus. That's a crummy thing, because there's so many areas like the north side of Wakeby Pond where they're just way out there. They're hard to reach with a sewer system. But in any case, I'm talking too much.
Can't hear you.
What's that?
Can you take off your mask so we can't hear you?
I don't want to die. All right. My daughter just got COVID over in Scotland. I'm going to take one mask off. How's that? Is that better? You guys just stay at least 6 feet away from me.
And 95.
Yeah.
All right. Anybody have any questions for the masked man?
Call him Zorro.
I just want to say that, that the commission, the sewer commission's lost a lot of experience, and, I commend you for stepping up to the plate and, coming back after, enjoying your retirement and stuff. So, I appreciate that, and thank you.
Questions?
Tom, yes.
Go ahead, Carol.
I know you have a lot of experience, but we also know that you don't play well with everybody on the committee.
Well, actually, everybody on the committee, other than one person, wasn't there the last time I was on the committee, so it depends on what you mean.
Oh, well,
And I don't know if that's the case anyways. I sort of deny that accusation.
no more questions.
John?
Yeah, again, Tom, with all due respect, it's, the biggest thing, I said it earlier with Phyllis, what I'm looking for in my opinion, and again, I only get 1 of 5 votes, is I want team players. And your knowledge it starts with you, I get it, and your experience it's priceless, but at the same time, in my opinion, it might come at a cost. I really am hoping, we've had a lot of messy commissions
Turmoil.
or boards and turmoil. And I don't want to see more of it. And that is,
What he brings.
right now, sitting in my gut saying, you have the expertise and the experience and all that, but I'm afraid that, it comes back in and it's your sewer commission, and it's not. It's the town's sewer commission.
I have no intention of it being my sewer commission. I absolutely will not want to be chairman or anything like that. I'm just here to offer my expertise to the new people on there. And by the way, I was on the commission for 33 years. I've served with dozens and dozens of sewer commissioners and never had a problem.
Yeah,
So I'm not sure where that's coming from.
Well, I again, it's not easy for me to say what I'm saying, because I can't respect someone more than I do respect you for your knowledge and experience and what you've done for this town. But the fallout from not being the big team player, which I'm concerned, because the fallout, it falls back on us. And that's why we're here today, trying to build back a sewer commission when, there was 2 or 3 people banded together and it just fell apart. And I'm looking for more team and listening more than just saying, I know. And you started the conversation when you come up there as, I know, I did it, I made it. I don't think that's what the sewer commission needs. I want the person that's going to ask the questions and make the best decision for the town. I'm not saying that you wouldn't, but how you're going to get there, I don't know if you would get there to asking the questions rather than saying, I already know the answer. And so that's my.
Well, my
do you have any
response to that
questions?
is, I know what questions to ask. All right, and you've had 4 sewer commissioners resign after I left the commission, so your disaster happened after I left, not while I was there.
It's fair.
Tom?
I don't have anything
Okay.
to add.
Tom, I asked you the same question I asked everybody else. You've written extensively over the last several months about the folly of expanding Phase 2, modifying Phase 2 beyond what's presented in the town's nitrogen management plan, which you rightfully take ownership of. Are you willing to entertain modifications to
Absolutely.
Phase 2 to include the lakes?
Yeah, because what you have to understand is the existing Phase 2 already covers Johns and Ashumet Pond, and the only thing limiting our ability to get up to Santuit and Mashpee Pond is just the physical location of where the adjacent facilities are. So, I mean, there's also the idea that, you know, we have TMDLs for the bays, for nitrogen. We don't have TMDLs for phosphorus in the ponds, and we don't have, other than Santuit Pond, where, you know, 5% is septic, we don't have the study done for Mashpee-Wakeby Pond, too. It would be very interesting to know what the results of that are before you know, decide where to put something. So,
So what I hear
but yeah,
there, what I
I'm
hear
saying,
there is a no.
No, it's not a no, it's a yes.
But a yes when? As part of phase 3? Beyond for Mashpee, Wakeby, and Santuit. Not currently part of phase 2. You just said you don't know enough. There is no TMDL on Mashpee, Wakeby, and you're relying on that old AECOM study that says 5% of the phosphorus load comes from septic systems.
Well, that's the only
what's the
study that's
logic
been
behind
done.
sewering or dealing with that there? And when?
No, when, you know, the whole thing about when is when you guys decide you want to come up with the money to do the next phase. I mean,
But if the sewer commission says there's no value in doing this, it's a chicken and the egg problem. If you're going to go on the commission and not put a proposed phase 2 before us that includes those pond areas, how is it that we're then in a position to put the money on the table?
well, like I said, the existing phase 2 already includes Johns and Ashumet Pond. It'd be very easy to get up the west side of Santuit Pond and also the west side of Mashpee Pond. The problem area is like the northeast side of Santuit. How do we get out there and when? And the same thing with Wakeby Pond, which is most of the impact is from Sandwich out there. So that's got to be a cooperative deal with Sandwich. But I am not saying no. I mean, the plan needs to be looked at every 5 years, and that's one of the things we have to look at.
I guess what I'm asking you is
So it's a yes.
Is not to say no, not to say not no, but are you willing to move forward this year with a proposed phase 2 that contemplates dealing with Mashpee, Wakeby, and Santuit?
With an appropriate phase 2 that does deal with the.
What does that mean?
That means that putting sewers way up in Sandwich has no impact on Santuit Pond, like a certain plan that's out there. And that, you know, phosphorus moves 300 feet in the soils. It doesn't move a mile and a half from Sandwich. So, you know, it's a different creature than nitrogen.
So then would you support a phase 2 that sewers within 300 feet?
Absolutely.
Of the contributing areas in Mashpee, Santuit, and Mashpee, Wakeby?
Absolutely. With the caution that Wakeby is separated from the rest of the town, and we have to deal with Sandwich on that. And much of the load is from Sandwich on the east and the west sides of Wakeby Pond.
But the north part of Wakeby is Mashpee.
Yep.
So that portion we control, and we have the ability to sewer now.
Yeah,
Correct.
I mean, we have to figure out how to get there. Either deal with Sandwich, you know, that they're going to pick it up, because
I just hear a lot of
Sandwich's
caveats.
existing plan doesn't
That's what
even
you
cover
got.
their Cove Road section right against Wakeby Pond, which is critical for that, too. So, yeah, absolutely, we got to look at phase 2.
Yeah, I hear a lot of caveats.
Well, I mean, there are a lot of caveats. You don't want to waste people's money on something that isn't going to achieve your goal.
But by the same token, the plan that was approved now 8 years ago, times have changed, understandings have changed, and there's a constituency and a need to deal with freshwater systems that the current plan doesn't deal with till phases 3, 4, and potentially 5, which we all acknowledge, if the shell fishing works, would never get built. So if you're an advocate for those 2 ponds, you stand the very real possibility of moving forward with the current plan and never seeing any mitigation for the phosphorus problem around those ponds. That concerns me greatly.
Well, just as you heard the presentation from DEP, that their focus is nitrogen, and that was the focus of our plan, because that's what the TMDLs are all about. Now that there's a political push, that there's having cyanobacteria blooms in Wakeby Pond that weren't there when we were developing the current plan, that's a different situation. So it calls for looking at the change. You know, I don't even know when the 5 years ends, because, you know, we did the plan in 2015. I suppose I don't know, do you know, Andy, that when we put a shovel in the ground, the 5 years starts, as far as?
5 years from the time the permit gets written. So,
Which,
groundwater
you're talking
discharge
about the
permit. So you're
watershed-based
talking-
permit.
You're talking 5 years from 2024. So are you suggesting that we wait till 29
No.
to modify the plan?
No, I wouldn't have assumed 2024, but in any case, that's, obviously, we'll need some funds to get somebody to look at it if we're going to have it designed, so it's up to you guys, because you just control the funds.
Funds are there. Question
No.
is, in your view, is it the sewer commission's domain to determine what areas get sewered next, or is it the Board of Selectmen's domain to make that decision?
Well, it's sort of a joint decision, because we can make all the plans we want, but if you don't fund them, it doesn't happen, so we both have to agree on it.
If the Board of Selectmen were to propose an article that includes sewer design money, that includes the ponds, would you view that as an intrusion upon, this October, as an appropriate exercise of our jurisdiction, or would we be stepping on the sewer commission's toes by doing that?
Proposing funding is entirely your jurisdiction.
And if the funding came through, would you authorize and oversee a design process that made that money, achieve the outcome that that money was intended to achieve?
Hopefully, it wouldn't be up to me. There's 7 members on the commission.
Asking
Like I
your
said, I'm not
opinion
going
on
to be.
what you would do. I know it's a 7-member.
Yeah, I know. Well, again, I can only answer since, I look at this stuff scientifically, is that we have to get it right. We have to get the right sewering done around the ponds to make sure we meet the targets, get rid of the problem. So that's not the existing phase 2.
It's not the current phase 2, and it's not, in your view, the current or the, at one time, proposed modifications to phase 2.
No, there were parts of it that I thought went too far. The stuff, like I said, up in Sandwich that won't have any impact on phosphorus in Santuit Pond. So that I would cut out. The rest of it makes sense.
Okay. Any other questions, comments, discussion on this appointment? No. Is there a motion on the appointment?
Making a motion to appoint Tom Fadala to the Sewer Commission.
Is there a second?
I give him a second.
Okay. Motion's been made and seconded. I'm just going to tell you now, I'm going to vote no. And, I think that I've just seen and heard too much
And I have to,
about
I'm
an
also,
unwillingness to be open to other people's ideas,
I am also voting
feel
no.
comfortable that it's going to work. And so
I have to agree with Andy. I am voting
that's
no.
where I am on this.
Well, I basically are very disappointed that you feel that way, because I've always been open to everybody's ideas. Everything's based on science. Follow the science.
People have different perspectives on personal relationships and professional interactions.
We
So there's a vote, there's a motion's been made to appoint. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone else?
No.
Anyone opposed?
No.
Who opposed? The motion fails 2-3. Thank you, Tom.
Very disappointing.
Our last appointment, Catherine Castaneda. I will say that we had referred Ms. Castaneda's interest to the commission. The commission, she was out of the country initially upon her request to be appointed. The commission's had COVID issues and been unable to meet, even though we waited a little bit. So it's the board's discretion at this point, whether you want to have a discussion, entertain the appointment, or whether you want to refer it back and hold it.
No, I think we should have the discussion and go
Does
forward.
anyone-
I agree.
I've looked at her resume.
Resume, and
Okay. So if that seems to be a view I share, though I think that Ms. Castaneda, welcome. I think you're largely unknown to all of us.
Yeah.
So if you would
good to
not
meet all of
mind
you.
giving some introduction,
It's good to meet you.
and we'd be interested in
Catherine
hearing.
Hoover, Castaneda. I arrived in Mashpee about 4.5 years ago, purchased a property on the Santuit River at Cutler Bay Condominiums, and became an investor in the town of Mashpee. I've gotten to know numerous residents within my community, but do a lot of traveling sometimes, at least recently. I came here kind of toward tiptoeing into retirement, sliding into it, slowly leaving a very busy consulting career, doing environmental remediation and disaster recovery. I grew up in Needham, Massachusetts, graduated from Needham High School, enjoyed summers on Cape Cod during the 1960s, became fascinated with the ecology of coastal landscapes here, and followed that up with my studies in marine biology in the Pacific Northwest, the Texas Gulf Coast, and continued that vein in Honduras, studying the Caribbean and the Pacific coasts of Honduras for my degree, and eventually a master's degree in environmental science for public health, with a focus on water quality, water pollution, and limnology and eutrophication in a lake in Honduras. But I have applied that to my consulting career and done a lot of environmental remediation for private clients and government clients. Worked with the Corps of Engineers on large contracts in the Southwest District. Mining clients in the Southwest that were devastated with pollutants that were devastating all kinds of water resources in the areas, and we've worked constantly to try and meet goals like with voluntary cleanup programs within the states and the federal EPA. I've worked with FEMA on numerous projects, especially since 2005, and with government units dealing with the disaster recovery funds, and helping them achieve environmental compliance in all their recovery projects, as well as mitigation and resilience planning. I have, being in all these places and being married to a Honduran for over 42 years, I have and working with indigenous communities across Central America, I would have to say, I have a unique perspective. I bring a perspective that really respects everybody's input. And it's important. I think perhaps the most important example was a community of about 7,500 people in Oklahoma, affected by serious mining problems, mostly a smelter that operated since World War I. And they had no idea of what had happened in their community. No idea. And there was a property owner lawsuit. And we would go in and we would help the owners come to an understanding of the process of how their properties got impacted by lead, cadmium, and arsenic over many, many decades, and how we needed them to contribute in solving the problem by allowing us to sample their properties and take samples and design a remediation approach for each one of their properties. That kind of experience, and in Honduras too, has led me to really appreciate the input from all different perspectives. I am a scientist, and I love coastal ecology. I am a rower.
when I'm healthy. I've been recently rowing in Hamblin Pond, but I've rowed other ponds and lakes across the Cape, and kayak, and I've seen the water quality issues. I see the eutrophication in Sandwich Pond just upstream from my Sandwich River that I look at out my window. And I did the herring run this year, which was interesting. I wanted to do it last year, but could not. Seeing the deterioration of the pond over the couple of months that I was doing that was really alarming, and I've seen it elsewhere. And I'm quite alarmed at the impact of the septic systems across the Cape. I would have to say that when I moved here, I wanted a Title V system. I wanted to be in a property that had a Title V septic, so we're connected with the Willow Bend system. It's okay. But that's what I bring to this commission. I've been, since leaving my job full-time, I've been trying to think about how I could contribute to the town that I'm invested in. And I thought this would be a good first start.
Well, Catherine, we're glad to have you.
Thank you.
Anybody have any questions? Tom, any questions?
I can't think of anything offhand. No,
Okay.
very good job.
David?
No, no.
John?
I wouldn't know where to start. I mean, honestly.
It's very impressive.
Yeah, it's impressive, and again, it just seems like you're very easygoing, and you just telling us about your life and your experience,
And play well with others.
yeah. So
I make
I
a
have no
motion
questions.
to bring Catherine forward.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, so motion's made and seconded. I just have one question, same one I've asked everybody else.
Please.
You prepared to move forward to expand the program to include the lakes?
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. All right, motion made and seconded to appoint. Ms.
I would
Gasko.
just add that Phase 1 is so important. We got to get it right. And I think adding the lakes will really help achieve the broader goal quicker.
Thank you. Motion made and seconded to appoint Dr. Castaneda to Sewer Commission. Is there a second? We got a second. All in favor?
Yes.
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 Yes. Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great job on the presentation.
with no disrespect to the sewer commission, who hasn't
No,
recommended, so
no, but,
with all due respect.
all right, next, discussion and possible approval of appointments of one candidate from two remaining to the Affordable Housing Committee, Arden Russell, Cadron, and Gary Schuman. Is Mr. Schuman here? Oh,
Yes.
hi. So I know that both of you and Ms. Kilpatrick withdrew her candidacy by email last week. So I know that the Sewer Commission, the Affordable Housing Committee met and interviewed candidates. The board has before it a summary recommendation sheet that doesn't actually carry with it a recommendation. And so I asked both candidates come make brief, if they want to make a presentation on their interest for being on the committee, have the board have the opportunity to ask questions, much like we just did, and we'll make a determination. So either one of you like to make a pitch, introduce yourself to the board?
Gary?
Raise your hand, I guess.
Come on up. Mr. Schuman.
More so a chance to say hello. I've never met anybody on the board before.
Oh.
So, yeah, I think probably similar to a couple other people that spoke, moved to Mashpee about 5 years ago, and have been involved in a lot of private interest groups, and decided that I really wanted to get a lot more involved in the town. I enjoy the town, I love the town, and it appeared there's two big issues: the water issue, which we just spent a lot of time on, and housing. And housing, impacts a lot of people. It impacts the economy. there's lots of issues and challenges, and it appears that how things have been going has not been working too well. There's not enough housing, affordable housing for people, and I think it's very different here, where in other parts of the country, you have land, you can go and build. Mashpee, like a lot of other communities, doesn't have that luxury, and I think it really is an issue of, my background where, I've worked with a lot of small companies looking at problems and trying to come up with innovative ways, new ways to address challenges. So whether it's repurposing housing or looking at different structures for housing, I think there's a lot on the table. Up front, you can tell from my resume, I don't come from a housing background. It's really just something I see as critical to the community. The community I want to get involved with, and I feel it's an area where I could probably help and at least, quickly learn and add some new dimensions or some new thoughts about tackling the problem. And
Good,
that's
thank you.
pretty much it.
For that introduction. Anyone have any questions?
I mean, I guess I'll chime in first. I kind of look at the recommendations as far as from the Affordable Housing Committee, and I look at that as far as working together and, their impression. You probably did the same thing, maybe even a little more in depth in front of them. But I don't have any hesitations with your candidacy.
David?
This committee, there's 2 seats or?
One.
One seat. So I did see that you have a real estate background, and, that provides a certain kind of benefit. I guess, I don't know, no, I don't have any questions.
Okay.
Sorry.
Tom?
Do you want to know how many people?
I totally get it.
I haven't eaten all day.
So I do have a couple of questions, and this just happened. It keeps coming up. Everybody's looking for affordable housing. At the Assembly with delegates last week, we had the former department head of the Cape Cod Commission, Paul Nedzwicki, there, and he brought up affordable housing. So, and everybody just discussed this affordable housing. Now, Paul and I have probably been involved with politics and affordable housing and town planning and all of these issues, and I said, the town of Mashpee, and when he was all done with his presentation, I said, Paul, all these years we've been working on this together, we're all looking for something to happen, but it never really comes out. You get a house over here, a house over there. Most of the time they go to someone will donate their land or a tax-saving property, but 50% of the land in Mashpee is protected open space.
Yeah.
There's no more land around. There are very, very few homes that haven't been built, and this is what I said to Paul last week. I said, so what are the answers? He had a big position with the Cape Cod Commission. I said, how are we going to make this happen? I don't know how we're going to make it. We can't increase somebody's pay scale. I mean, the jobs, a lot of them are just beginning, startup, people that are just getting out and getting on their feet. They're looking for homes, but they can't afford the homes. I mean, a lot of people that live in their community, in their homes today, couldn't afford to buy them today, couldn't live in these communities. I said, so Paul and I were while we were talking about it, he agreed with me. And I said, so where do you think, let me ask you, you must have some thoughts on it. Where do you think you can create housing? Where, land, would it have to be given to somebody? I mean, how are we going to make this happen? The cost of housing, the cost of living here, just.
Yeah. I'll tell you, from what I've been looking at over the past few months when I decided to apply for it, it seems that there's been a lot of effort lately in using, whether you want to call them strip malls, old hotels, facilities that are already built, a structure that's already there, but taking it from what it was and turning it into potential housing facilities. So I think part of, at least from what I understand, part of the concept is ideally everybody would love to have a single-family home with a white picket fence. Realistically, is that going to happen in Mashpee today? Probably not. So if that's not going to happen, you can't throw your hands up and say, what do? You have to find other solutions. And I really think whether it's taking existing facilities is a potential way. I don't know how much, and again, this is the rookie of me coming out. I don't know how much land Mashpee owns, and I don't even know if Mashpee owns enough land to make an impact on the numbers that need to be given to give people a chance to have a place to live. And I think there's a lot of issues. The white picket fence is home ownership. Does it have to be home ownership? Or even rentals? People who live in rented facilities, it's incredibly tough to find a rental for anybody today. So it's the ownership, it's the rental, it's a mix of things. So, listening, it was an education listening to the water. Will putting septic systems fix everything? Maybe it may fix most of it, but I think with housing it's a little different. I don't think you can come up with one solution and say, we're going to put all of our eggs into the new build basket, we're going to donate the land and go crazy building houses. I think it'd be wonderful, and you'd have a lot of happy people, but I just don't see that as a practical solution given the economics in the market today. It's got to be a mix, and it has to be different than how it's been handled in the past. Because like you said, whatever's been done, it's tough. It hasn't been working.
No.
Yeah.
Very
So.
difficult.
Any other questions, Tom? All right, Carol, anything? I don't have any questions other than just a comment that, we've two qualified candidates. So if it doesn't go your way, I would encourage you to stay involved. I think we can use, certainly the town can use new ideas coming in.
Yeah.
So thank you for your interest.
Sure.
And I'm going to give Arden an opportunity to have the same conversation. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for hearing some of my comments. Arden Russell. I have been a resident of Mashpee for 30 years and was involved in mostly school activities. And as my family grew and I have more time, I've now decided that I'd like to become more involved in town activities. I think that I know that my background best fits the Affordable Housing Committee. For 30 years, I have worked in the affordable housing field on Cape Cod, most recently for another municipality as the affordable housing specialist. While I was there, I had the opportunity to research, develop, design, and implement strategies to create more housing in that town, and many of them were very successful. We did create and have been creating many units of housing. There is no one solution, as we've talked about, there is no one solution, but I have worked on many different types of issues, very many different types of projects that do create housing units. I feel that what I can add to this committee is that I have written grants and received grants that have created programs that have both helped the community and helped residents to get housing. I still have relationships with our community partners, nonprofits, and the State Department of Housing and Community Development. I now want to share that expertise that I have with the town of Mashpee to help move this issue into action. Right now, I'm working on a project with a nonprofit where I am assisting homeowners to create accessory dwelling units, which is another solution. Again, it's not going to be the only solution, but it's a solution to help both the existing homeowners to potentially be able to afford to stay in their homes and to help create smaller units. So I'd be welcome any questions you might have for me.
Anybody have any questions for Arden?
Yes, you said in past you have created affordable housing?
Programs that have created affordable housing. I designed and administered a loan program for homeowners. I applied for and received community preservation funds, to provide loans to homeowners to create accessory dwelling units. I wrote a grant to the Community Preservation Committee that awarded the Affordable Housing Trust in the community where I work $2.5 million, so that...
And where did you do this?
Where I did this in the town of Barnstable. So that grant provided $2.5 million to the trust, and the trust created a number of programs with that funding, including assistance for rental development buy-downs for developers and pre-development funds for parcels that were looking to decide if they were the best site for housing. So this was the pre-development work, the engineering. We provided fundings to get those sites off the ground. I participated in a study of all the municipal parcels owned by the town and rating them and allocating them for their potential use for affordable housing.
Any other questions, Carol?
No, not at this moment.
Obviously, it sounds like your experience is unquestionable. You have a lot of experience in, affordable housing. I do have to, I go back to, looking at recommendations from the Affordable Housing Committee. We have, it seems like we have two good candidates. And it is kind of unfortunate that there's only one opening. But not to steal your comment, that you might make the same comment, but if you are not chosen, I hope you do stay involved because, you have a lot of expertise that, the town needs. So at some level, whatever it may be, and the same goes for, Gary, as Andy said. So, I wish you well.
Thank you.
David?
This whole ranking system is rather confusing. I mean, it comes out a tie depending on how you look at it. I just feel as though as a board, we need to put people in place that bring the most qualifications that directly affect the committees that they're coming to. And, looking over them and listening to, your statements, I do feel as though, you're more than capable of bringing a lot of input to those conversations. They are difficult conversations, and, wish you best of luck.
Thank you.
That's all I had.
Okay.
More of a
Tom, any
statement.
questions?
I don't have any questions, but, obviously you're very well qualified, and that's certainly something we need, is to have some of the qualifications to help move this forward, so good luck.
The Affordable Housing Committee has given them the rating classification, and the committee themselves strongly recommended Gary for their committee, and one recommended with hesitation. On Arden Russell, they recommended with hesitation, and one recommended not to recommend. I am going to vote accordingly to the Housing Committee and
If you're done with
recommend-
questions, I can...
And
Yeah,
recommend
I think
Gary.
we're in the discussion phase at
Sorry.
this point. Thank you, Arden.
And recommend Gary Schumann for a candidate.
Okay, Carol's made a motion to appoint Mr. Schuman to vacancy. Is there a second?
I would second that.
All right. I, again, appreciate your candidacy and interest and hope you'll stay involved. I feel that, from where I sit, having the subject matter expertise is the matter that sort of elevates Arden's candidacy above Mr. Schuman's, and I hope you do not take that as a criticism. So I'm going to generally in agreement with David. So that said, there's a motion to appoint
Gary.
Mr. Schuman, sorry, it's late, Mr. Schuman to the committee. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye,
Aye.
No.
No.
3-2.
3-2. All right, so Mr. Schuman gets the appointment. All right. Communications and correspondence. There's nothing new, is there? That's not in the packet? I don't think?
No.
Okay.
I don't think so.
No old business. New business.
It was 3-2.
The vote was 3-2 to appoint Mr. Schuman. Sorry, I thought you all heard. I put on the new business discussion of next Monday. We have a joint meeting with Tribal Council. I'm working and talking to the chair, that I think you folks are, about agenda items. And so I wanted to ask the board if there was anything in particular you wanted to see on the agenda for Monday so that we can properly post. The ideas I had were discussion of potential town utilization of any excess capacity of the wastewater treatment plant at Meeting House Road. Was something that was originally contemplated. Prior administration took it off the table. Worth checking in and see whether it's a possibility to
Great idea.
revise that conversation. Opportunities to collaborate on funding opportunities for wastewater, potential, collaboration on funding for, shellfish mitigation and possible access for infrastructure funds that tribe might have access to that we might partner on. Similar discussion around land acquisition, tribal interest in additional open space acquisition and how we might work together on that. And then possibly a reaffirmation of the IGA. It's, in effect, it's been a document that's been around for how long now? 15 years, 12 years, something like that. And I think it's served us well, and just an opportunity to have a conversation. Not that I don't think we want to revisit it, but just make sure there's no qualms from the tribe's perspective about continuing forward. If there's a need to have a conversation, get that on the table. Not an exhaustive list, but those are just a few ideas
No,
that I thought would make sense to give the chair a heads up that we might want to
Are you
talk
going to
about.
sit with Brian and do a agenda?
We've gone back and forth a
Okay.
little bit on, what passed for
So we kind of
conversation.
know.
What passed for conversation today via instant messaging and texting.
Okay.
But, so, I wanted to gather input. I didn't want to put anything on the table that the rest of the board didn't want to see on the table either.
No.
So those are some ideas, and I don't know if there's others people have.
Any collaboration discussions on clean water, cleaning Santua Pond? I mean, I know it's kind of ongoing, but I don't know.
Okay. All right.
It's kind of always out there, but
All right, I think we need to bring this to closure, and we need because of the joint meeting, our open meeting law posting obligations
Oh,
remain
right.
in effect, so we need to resolve this by Wednesday, Thursday at the outside.
Wednesday, Thursday at the latest.
Right, so I'll continue to work with Rodney's office on other items, and you'll see them as they come.
The only other things that I can think of off the top of my head is, I do know that there's a lot of tribal members concerned with the boats on Mashpee, Wakeby, and, the size and how many. There's some elders that have made mention of, they feel as though it's contributing to the Sino coming back between Wakeby and Mashpee, concerned for the kids and
The
things like that.
size or the number or both?
I think it's both. It's some of the various things that I've heard as far as concerns. The other thing would be, as far as initiatives, I don't know if the town and the tribe are collaborating on climate adaptation initiatives. And I think there's a lot of funding out there that if we did collaborate, I think those kind of projects would be really beneficial to our water quality and coastal resiliency issues, things of that nature, and may subsequently address some other concerns. So any kind of collaboration efforts we could make on that front probably be a good idea.
Everybody cool with those being
Yeah,
added?
that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I know Brian had mentioned, the chair had mentioned to me that he was surveying council members. So let's connect tomorrow.
All right.
And I'll
Okay.
fill you in.
Good.
All right, very good. No additional topics, liaison reports,
Nope, I'm good.
anybody? It's 9:10.
None at this time.
I know, it's 9:10.
All right, town manager update, it's 9:10.
I know, I'm gonna go through this real quick. I know that there's the parking ticket situation that we're gonna follow up on. We were hoping that we were gonna do it at your next meeting in July, but looks like the better date would be August 8th. That will enable us to collect a little bit of data in terms of what other towns are doing. So I just wanted to make you aware of that.
It's fair.
For Selectman O'Hara, we certified the county ARPA funds at level 2 this afternoon. There was a certification that needed to happen, and I think we were, 2 or 3 words over our limit, so we had to delete a couple words, but we took care of it, and that's all set. The host community agreement that the board approved June 6th, tentatively, was executed today. I did that with Chef John.
Oh, okay.
I guess he's known as Chef John.
Chef John.
That's what I've always
We know
called
who you
him.
mean.
Is that his official name?
I think it is.
Yeah, I'm just so used to calling him
Yeah, I
Chef
know.
John. It just came out automatically. They already told you about the One Cape Summit, so I don't have to get into that. COVID, in the last week, we did add 16 new positives. 11 cases moved out of isolation, and today, 14 town meeting articles were submitted, 1 petition article, which was a road taking. I haven't really had a chance to look at those. And I know that the board received this information, but I want to just publicly announce it, that the Mashpee Police Department was the first place winner at the New England Association of Chiefs of Police Community Policing Award for 2021 with a population of over 15,000. So I congratulate Chief Carline and the Mashpee Police Department for a job well done. And with that, I'll...
That was their second accolade in the last month.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Very good.
Should we
right.
recognize them with a citation?
I think it would be nice to...
I think
Why
so.
don't we have him come in
together.
and we can congratulate him on his efforts to improve,
Good idea.
especially the
Why don't we see
community
if we can get a
policing part of it.
citation?
Right,
Great idea.
All right.
yeah.
Okay. Public comment, as Marjorie Hecht had signed up, but she's gone. Lynn, remind everybody of the 3-minute clock, including the timekeeper over there.
Lynn Barbie, Surf Drive. So first, with regard to the Housing Committee, I think maybe you all know, maybe you don't know, but there was a violation of the open meetings law at that meeting, so we don't know what the questions were and what the comments were, and that was really disturbing to a lot of us that we had no idea. I know that Arden and I have attended those meetings before and offered to, work together with them. And it is astonishing to me that the person with the most experience was not voted in. I have nothing against Mr. Schuman, who's a Realtor. That's fine. I hope he works well. But this is really astonishing loss for this community to not have Arden on that committee. Now, with regard to the Sewer Commission, once again, the most experienced person you all did not support. And that is astonishing to me as a member of this community, that we think that playing nice is more important than having knowledge and expertise. And I think that You know, the fact that we have somebody who's a farmer is nice, but that doesn't bring any expertise to, and these are the two most pressing problems in this town, is affordable housing and the wastewater, and you all have voted down the most experienced people, and I think that's just really very disappointing to many of us in this town. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. Mary?
Hi, Mary Wagon. I'm here as chair of the planning board, and to remind the community, the Mashpee community, that the next local comprehensive workshop is scheduled for Saturday, July 23rd at 10 o'clock. It's being held at the library. I have spied a few select board members at those meetings, and I really appreciate people attending them. They're open to all. I strongly encourage people to start attending these meetings. This document is going to be a big, thick, very rich, robust document, and we will need to bring it to different boards for approval, and one of them is yours. And it won't be something that you'll be able to read overnight. So I appreciate you getting involved now. The topic for this workshop, and it is the fourth workshop in this series, is built systems, which is things like traffic, transportation, infrastructure, including wastewater treatment. Again, all are invited to attend and participate, even our seasonal residents. That's why we had some of these during the summer. I know it's a Saturday, but it's really important that we invest some time into our town, even if you're here only part-time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. All right, I'll look for a motion. John?
I'll do it.
All right.
I move the board convene an executive session pursuant to General Law, Section 30A, subsection 21A3, for the purpose of discussing strategy relative to Michael Mendoza, working comprehensive claim, litigation with the chair declaring that such discussion in open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the litigating position of the board. The Board of Selectmen will not reconvene in open session.
I declare that an open meeting on these issues may have a detrimental effect on litigating and bargaining position of the town. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
All in favor?
Yes.
Yes. All right, thank you.